Hi friends, welcome back. So Nvidia has officially landed on the moon. That's been the story of the market today and really all year. I want to go over this and share my thoughts and get yours as well. So Nvidia, that's the big green one. It's been green like forever. And in fact, it is now the most valuable company in the world, passing Apple and Microsoft. So it seems that the last time we had a company worth more than Apple Microsoft, it was back in 2011. ExxonMobil, but that was a while ago. And this was an interesting quote here. It says, "But if you think back to the tech bubble that went from '97 to 2000, it had a long runway. This one still has runway too." And that's essentially the question, right? How much further can this thing go? It's already number one, and I guess the sort of trick now is who can reach 4 trillion market cap, right? So in terms of 3 trillion market cap, you only have 3 companies: Nvidia, Microsoft, and Apple, right? So there's a 3 trillion. Then after that, you have Google at 2 trillion, and then Amazon, Saudi Aramco, Meta, Taiwan Semi, Berkshire Hathaway, and Eli Lilly. And it's interesting. I was thinking about Nvidia, where my understanding is Warren Buffett was not in this one. I think Kathy Wood had some a little bit before, but then sold out of it. I don't believe Michael Burry got any of this stuff. Maybe he's shorting it. Who knows? And it's interesting because I think, NVIDIA's been just kind of the right place, right time. They benefited from that crypto rally, right? You guys remember that? And then now we're on this AI rally. Myself think this is all a bubble. And I'll kind of go through some things I thought were really interesting, and you guys will see what people are saying. You can see here, this is the Dan Ives guy. He's the one of the king pumpers that you'll see on TV. But this is what he says. He says, "We believe over the next year, the race to 4 trillion market cap in tech will be front and center between Nvidia, Apple, and Microsoft," right? So he's saying those 3 companies are going to be figuring out who is the most valuable. And then this was one sentence that really caught my attention here. It says, "Investors, alongside Huang," talking about Jensen Huang, the CEO, "argue that Nvidia is more than a chip maker." And the question I pose to you is, where have we heard this before, right? This is more than a chip maker, guys. And the answer is Tesla, right? When people tell you it's more than a car company, right? So when people start telling you, Nvidia does a lot more than just chips, I would be a little bit worried. In my opinion, like I said, I think this is all a bubble myself. But I am reading some of the bull quotes because it's always fun to hear what they say. But again, they're going to say it's more than a chip company. This person says, this is the over Michael Lippert over at Baron Capital, says they're not just selling chips, they're selling systems. Okay, and actually regarding the selling system thing, there is an investigation by the government on whether or not Nvidia has a monopoly. We talked about it before, but the basic gist of it is, are they locking into an ecosystem, right? Be it customers, and essentially. Is that deem a monopoly? And so we'll see. And it's interesting how they're kind of coinciding with that. Hey, you're not selling chips, you're selling a system. Also, too, this is coming from Dan Ives, again, with the pumper guys. NVIDIA's GPU chips are in essence the new gold or oil in the tech sector. And as more enterprises and consumers quickly head down this path with the 4th industrial revolution well underway. And, guys, you may not know, I always mention my age because I've seen this stuff before. I'm 49, and I started doing stocks back in 2000, the dot-com bubble. And I actually remember this stuff. What I'm referring to is Intel. Intel had a similar run to NVIDIA. And, the thing with like NVIDIA or an Intel, the people weren't wrong, right? This was the type of industry and company of the future, but doesn't necessarily mean that you pay any price for it. And this was back in September 23rd, 2000. I want to read some of the headlines on Intel, and it's kind of interesting when you look back in history. And especially for those of you who want to learn about the market, this is a good way to learn. Let's read what people were saying about Intel. Intel warning sparks world sell-off. Oh no, that was back in 2000, and before it was just like going to the moon. And it says here, stocks swooned around the world after Intel Corp warned of slower than expected European sales, focusing investor attention on fundamental problems that had been willing to overlook, right? So sort of like in a bubble, when something's going up, you just buy it because you expect it to go up more. Like you don't really care about numbers. You don't necessarily care about what kind of new products they come out. It's like it's just going to go up more, and everyone's buying it, and you sort of expect that. And that's essentially peak bubble. Now, in defense of NVIDIA, my understanding, I think the newer chips, I think they're calling them Blackwell, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But my understanding is they're going to try to convince people that they're going to have yearly, releases to keep people to keep buying. Because something that that's the argument they're going to make. But the thing that I've always said is about chips is that they're cyclical, right? So you're going to upgrade to get whatever GPU or whatever you need. Then how often are you going to do that? And these things aren't cheap, right? It's like 40 grand a pop. And also too, how many customers out there for them. One of the things I think is real concerning about Nvidia is all these companies are going to be investing heavily, or have been investing. I guess this have been, and if you're a bull, going to be investing heavily in this thing. But you got to turn a profit ultimately, right, on this AI stuff, and that's the question. Is the investment that companies are making going to be worth it, and will people keep buying? This is interesting as well. I want you to read this. This is the day of the Intel sell-off. So again, looking back in history, just learn from the past. Intel itself lost about 80 billion of market cap. It was like in a day, I guess. The stock fell $13 to 47.93. More than 300 million Intel shares were traded, eclipsing a single stock volume record of 200 million. So like a whole bunch of people sold, and there actually wasn't enough liquidity to sell it, because it was just like all the selling pressure. And then this is funny. This was the day before. It says markets recover from the Intel news. So on September 22nd, right, they were saying, oh, everything's fine. And then it was the next day later, everything kind of crashed. This is actually, and I want to show you this. We'll compare Intel and Nvidia in a moment here. But this is the last 5 years of Nvidia. And for those of you who YOLO'd back in 2020, you proved to us that diversification is no good. Just YOLO on Nvidia, and you'll go to the moon. I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic. And I know we have some people in the community that were heavily in this, like to hear about it. But to predict this sort of AI craze is nuts. I remember when we first started talking about this stuff, like the ChatGPT, and it just took off like wildfire. I think what's going on right now, though, is a lot of companies are positioning themselves on this, and not necessarily buying NVIDIA chips, but talking about the companies that are competing with NVIDIA. And this is where it becomes really tough, right? For example, when Apple announced their stuff with ChatGPT, they specifically said that they were going to build their servers and sort of architecture based on their own silicon chips. So we'll see. And this is sort of the challenge for NVIDIA. Can they maintain the lead? I mentioned before they're under investigation. I can't remember if it was the DOJ or the FTC. It was both. Because what I mean by that, if you guys followed this, we talked about before, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Trade Commission we're talking to each other on who's going to investigate Microsoft, who's going to investigate Nvidia, who's going to investigate OpenAI, and they divvied it up. But the basic gist was, is this a monopoly or not? The other challenge going forward for Nvidia, which is we say different from the past, is what's going on with China. Because remember, we have we meaning the USA have essentially sanctions like, hey, Nvidia, you can't sell chips to China. There's been reports that Nvidia will sell chips to like a third party, and then the third party will sell them to China, so they'll get in that way. Someone actually mentioned in the comments an interesting thing that theoretically, if you want to stop chip sales to China, you would put some sort of GPS tracking in the chips. I'm not sure. That's just someone wrote that in a comment, but I'm not even sure if that's technologically feasible. You guys can let me know if you have thoughts on that. I don't know. I mean, and we might raise the cost of that thing considerably. But I wanted to point this out here. This was Intel. And remember, guys, back in 2000, it was all the rage because computers were the future, right? And it wasn't wrong. Computers were the future, but does that mean you pay any price for the stock? Nvidia has yet to recover. It did briefly, like almost got back to its prior peak, but learn from the past. And for those of people who say, oh, Chris, you're so dumb, you don't know anything, and this is sort of why I want you guys to just learn. Remember when everyone was telling you that Tesla was going to go to the moon, right? It certainly did at one point, but ultimately it did cool down. I think it's down by like half of what it was. Remember when I was telling you that Dogecoin is going to go to the moon? Now, I don't think Nvidia is going to be like Dogecoin in the sense that Dogecoin does no inherent value. Nvidia certainly has inherent value. I mean, it's not like we're going to stop using it necessarily. I think, in my opinion, Nvidia may be something more like a Netflix, to where, like at this stage in the game, it's hard to see Netflix going anywhere. As I said, at this stage, same with Nvidia. But it wasn't like Netflix didn't cool off, and that's sort of what I'm thinking is going to be something like this, and then maybe come back up eventually. It just seems nuts that it would just keep going up and up and up. And that's what Nvidia's been doing. It's been going up every day. Would Nvidia be like a Peloton? And guys, I'm just showing you, prior charts to think about, like, put this in perspective. There's Peloton. That was a big one. Hey, we're all exercising at home, etc. But yes, Nvidia is different than Peloton. But I do want to point out, though, guys, that not every company survives this sort of AI craze. I'll give you an example. I'm not talking about AI, but I just want to give you an EV example because essentially, we go through different phases where certain things are hot and certain things are not. So there was a time, you guys remember when EVs were like all the rage and everyone's looking for the next Tesla. Fisker actually declared bankruptcy. It's official today. We kind of knew it was coming, but now it is. And the crazy thing about it is this guy's second bankruptcy. I don't know who gives this person money, right? So the stock has actually already been delisted. I don't think this is going to happen to Nvidia. I mean, Nvidia it's too big of a company. They've been around too long. And to be fair to Nvidia, I want to say, and you guys can correct me on the dates. I want to say they were founded like in the 90s. I think they're even before they went public, I believe, in the .com bubble, but I think they were before the 90s. And also too that they've been one of the leaders for years, so they're not a new company. The thing is though is that like when we're talking about Nvidia going to the moon, or actually already there, is like how much bigger can it get? It's already at 3 trillion. Are we going to go 4 trillion? Or it's hard. Like for example, I don't see it doubling because if it were, let's look at that chart again. Just for example, if Nvidia were to double from here, I mean, what's it going to be? Double the price of Microsoft and Apple? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I guess theoretically, if you think that the dollar is going to be worthless and Bitcoin is going to be worthless and just put all your money in Nvidia, I guess it ends up being like a Ponzi kind of situation. Because and what I mean by that is like when you disconnect from the fundamentals, too much, that you're just betting on speculation that it's going to go up, so therefore I buy it. When you actually look at the numbers in Nvidia, so they're not awful. I mean, their P, well, I mean, it depends. So, okay, so what I mean is, okay, so their P is 72, right? That's the non-GAAP. If you want to look at GAAP, it's 76, so it's high. But the thing is, they've been growing like crazy. So if you look at their PEG gap, it's like the PEG is what I look at, and usually want something under one or under one, but it's like 0.1. It's because they've had massive growth. So this does justify high P ratios. Because sometimes people ask me, Chris, does it mean you never get a high P stock? Not necessarily, right? If the growth matches, so meaning that if my earnings growth is above my PE, then I'm in the clear. You look at non-GAAP, and this is forward PE. You can see here you have it at 1.57. It's a little bit high. Also, too, do bear in mind that when you look at forward PEs, these are projections. No one can know the future 100%. And that's why I was showing you the Intel stuff, because essentially what it was is they came out with news that, the European economy is faltering, and we didn't get such so much demand from the home PC market that we thought. So essentially for Nvidia to crash or go down, maybe they get an earnings report out and the projections aren't as rosy as people thought, or maybe there's some sort of ruling about monopoly. These kind of things gets broken up. You never know, these kind of stuff. But like I said, it's not that Nvidia stock is worthless. People always say, "Oh, Chris, it's all worthless. Why are you such a downer?" It's just hard to see Nvidia doing the same performance from here, especially when a lot of YouTube channels or even people on TV tell you that it's early. I just don't think it's early in Nvidia. This is if you ask the robots what's Nvidia worth, this would say overvalued by 78%, the fair value of 73. Robots don't take into account the news. They do take into account the numbers though. And if you do want to check out what Wall Street is saying about Nvidia, you can see right here, much of Wall Street is saying like 140-ish, something like that. And you guys can, I'll leave this up. I'm sure Dan Ives will tell you it's going to be like, $1,000 or something crazy, but but that's what it is. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts on any one of these things. Do you agree with me that it's a bubble, or do you think it's going to go crazy from here and yet another, quadruple 1,000 bazillion %? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, and catch you all in the next video.